because I have one more category that it's going to include some of you guys. If you just joined the team during our stage ask, so this month you joined because Greg stood on the stage and Jen asking for more volunteers. Awesome. I love it. Thank you guys. We could not do this work without you. So I've got some fun facts to share with you since we opened. So this was fun. When I pulled this number, I had no idea what it was going to be until I actually pulled it and added it up. But we have served a lot of kids since we have opened. The number of 28,464 kids, and that does not include this weekend. So if you add this weekend, that puts us over 29,000 kids since we've opened. So good job, you guys. And then you guys have done 5,767 volunteer hours. Now that's not actually the time that you've been here. I was just counting how many services that you guys have done per person, adding them all up. So it's really, you're here more than an hour, so it's actually longer than that. Next is the volunteers who have joined since January 2018 is 208. So we have 208 people who were not at other sites who have joined us since. And then new families, which is crazy, 1,433 new families. So you guys have welcome centers. Shout out to you guys, because you guys have registered 1,433 families. So most of them I think were opening weekend, but no, actually we have new families every single weekend. Next is the number of guests. So I don't know if you guys know this, but you can bring your guests with you. So if you have a family, like you have your child and they have a friend spend the night and their friend wants to come to church with you the next day, that would be an example of a guest, or your family from out of town, things like that. That is what is a guest versus a new family. How many pounds of goldfish have we eaten? The answer is 476 pounds. You guys have used hula hoops either to play or for lessons, and we have busted 17 hula hoops. So thank you. Obviously, it takes a lot of you guys to pull this off every weekend, so thank you. And on that note, I have a few awards to give out. So we have had a lot of funny things happen since we opened. So I'm going to go through some of those because I have awards for some of those volunteers who participated in some of the funny things that have happened around here. So the first thing, for those of you guys who have been serving since Super Bowl weekend, we had upstairs dot markers, if you guys remember those. And these dot markers were very, let's say, juicy. So the award for, so we had some people who had to go home with new shirts or kids club shirts. They were very messy, they exploded on our carpet. So the I Survived the Dot Marker Explosion Award goes to Heather Henderson. She's hoping that we would never use them again. All right, so this next award, this one had our whole Welcome Center team cracking up one day. And I actually forgot to bring the prop that I was going to use for this award. Jen, do you have my prop? No. Okay, great. She's got my prop. Awesome. We might need a demonstration of this award. Lori Welser for the best hiccup remedy. So Lori Welser, the backstory of this is Lori serves at Welcome Center, and she's very embarrassed right now. And she taught all of Welcome Center how to get rid of hiccups. So Lori, would you like to come up here and demonstrate?
Lori, okay? We're all going around, hey, everybody's got a hiccup cure, right? Everybody's is different. And Lori goes, well, you know how to cure hiccups.
Oh, I did not go like that.
You can come up here and tell your own story. Right now, I'm Lori. Until you're up here, I'm Lori. Well, you know how to solve hiccups, right? Well, tell us. She goes, you drink water upside down. Lori, please show us how to drink water upside down. Okay, I will. She proceeds to get in the stance. She goes, you kind of have to put it on the lip here, not up here, but right here, and then you kind of go like this.
Oh my God.
We said, show us that again. She goes, can you show it to you again? Oh my God. You guys,
So red.
we feel like it's gonna explode. Let's give a hand to Lauren Aldridge.
I love you, Lori. Okay, so the next thing that I want to give, the next award that I want to give is, so we have, you guys have probably worked with them, we have amazing student volunteers. Like, we have student volunteers that lead our lessons. They are interacting with kids, they are going up in front and leading in large groups, so they are amazing. And so we thought we would pick at least one of them tonight to give a special award to. And this one goes to somebody who's been getting a lot of compliments lately for her dance moves. So in preschool large groups, she will go up and demonstrate, and when all of the adults forget what they're doing, Brianna Miller will come up and present for everybody. So Brianna, you received the award for Best Dance Moves in the All right, so next story. You guys have been in Kids Club long enough, probably, even if you've just started, to figure out that some of our kids sometimes do things like bite, they hit, they throw up, they do all kinds of fun things like that. So this gal was serving, it was her first time serving, and she got scratched up by a kid. She was doing her best to calm this child, a preschooler. And she just did not let it faze her. She totally came back. She's still serving today with her granddaughter, and she's here tonight. So the Survivor Award goes to Karen Bach. I'll get it to you in a second, Karen. I know, right? Cool. So, thank you guys, really, from the bottom of my heart. I love every one of you guys. While I was out, for you guys that don't know, I was out for a little bit this summer having some medical stuff. When I came back that first weekend, I couldn't stop beaming, going around talking to everybody, because it just made me remember how much I love Kids Club. It was just every volunteer I talked to, like, oh, I love that person, I love that person, I love that person. I truly mean it. You guys are the heart of this place and the best volunteer team, the hardest working ones on East Side, so thank you. We're going to kind of shift a little bit and go into a little more serious kind of information. Tara Brock, who I had introduced earlier, I don't know if you know this about her, but her job, well actually still, she does this on the side. She's an occupational therapist. She'll talk about that a little bit more. So she brings a lot of skills and knowledge to us on staff. So she's going to talk a little bit about reframing behavior in Kids Club and what it kind of means to look at kids a little bit different way than we might have parented as parents, that we might have been parented ourselves, and kind of the why behind why we do things the way we do in Kids Club. So I'm going to let her take over after that, and then we will do some breakouts, and we promise to get you guys out on time at 8 o'clock. Hi guys!
So for those of you that have never met me, my name is Tara Brock, and this is a picture of my family. This fall, my family had the opportunity to go to family camp, and so this is a picture after we spent an entire day of just having loads of fun, swimming in this giant pond and launching each other off this trampoline. So that's my husband Eric, and then my two boys that some of you probably have had in class at some point in Kids Club. So my oldest is Jameson, he's 9, and then my youngest is Matt. So, and just like what Kristen said, something that's unique about me is that I'm an occupational therapist. And I bet you're kind of wondering, why is there an occupational therapist on staff in Kids Club? Well, what's really cool about OTs is that we really have a wealth of knowledge of what a child development looks like. as well as we are trained really well in coming alongside of children and families and volunteers and staff and helping kids be a part of the community and including as well as helping people be successful right where they're at. So I get to bring those tools and use them here. So just like what Kristen was saying today, our purpose is that we're going to talk a lot about what it looks like to reframe behavior. So that's kind of a funny word, right? Reframing. What I mean is I want you to stop, think about things that happen in Kids Club that you're like, this makes me just feel really frustrated. Or, I don't know what to do about this. What we're going to do is talk about how you can start to shift the way that you feel and think about those actions and come up with ways to address those concerns in a way that shifts and flips the script for kids and the adults that we work alongside of and with. So we're going to do both things. We're going to look at how we can look at behaviors differently as well as come up with helpful tools that you can use right now. Now for you Welcome Center folks, I don't want you to tune me out. So you're like, this is all really about kids. I want you to think about the families that arrive to you when they come to the welcome desk for the first time. And for nursery, you're probably going, I'm not sure how this relates to me. Well, our mission when we're serving in nursery is to help parents and caregivers know that we're going to keep their babies safe and and that we're going to make Kids Club fun. And we're going to make sure that the family feels welcome. So I want you to shift your minds and think about how to reframe the way that you interact with the parents that you're working with when you're in nursery. So that kind of help you for those teams where you're like, I don't necessarily work directly with kids on a regular basis. So we're going to start a little bit with this iceberg illustration. So this iceberg illustration is a great way to think about behavior and even people in general. When you meet somebody, what you see are their actions, their behaviors, the way they navigate, the way they speak. That's all the stuff that we can see, right? That's above the surface level. Well, there's so much more to a person than what we can see in their actions, right? There's their successes, there's their failures, their strengths, their weaknesses, and even sometimes their traumas, and the things that are really hard for them. But we don't know those when we meet people for the first time, right? What we know is we see just what we can see on the surface. So take me, for instance. If you've met me before, you might know that I have a hand injury, and that's a seen hurt that you might have noticed about me when you're working alongside of me. And when you're working with me, you might realize that there are certain things that are really tricky for me to do. For instance, when I push the fuss bus and I go and get a toddler out of toddler class and I put them in the fuss bus, buckles and straps are really tough for me. And if you're working alongside of me, you might go, that's a little tricky for Tara. I'm just going to come along and I'm going to buckle that buckle for her and I'm going to adjust that strap. And you just move on because you see my need and you make adjustments because you're my teammate, right? Well, what you might not know about me under the surface is that as a child, I had lots of times in my life, especially after my hand injury, where I had words of disappointment spoken over me. And because those things happened to me as a child over and over and over again, being told, you're not going to be able to do that, you can't do that, that's going to be too hard for you. I started to build a script in my head that I was unworthy and that I was not enough. And out of that, I became a performance junkie. I was going to prove to everyone that I could do everything that they thought I couldn't do. And in that performance, I became a perfectionist. And so for me, what happened is that I ended up with big wounds around when things didn't go right and when things fell apart. But luckily for me, I had people that came alongside of me in my childhood who helped me meet Jesus. And in that process of meeting Jesus, it helped me reframe and see that I am a child of God, and I am worthy, and I am enough. But it was because I had people in my life as a child who spoke truth over me. So if we look at this illustration, just like this tree, I had lots of people in my life who spoke truth over me. And they told me about who Jesus was in a language that I understood. And because of that, I was able to develop deep roots on who Jesus was and what he had to say about me, and that he loved me abundantly. And because of those deep roots and of the people speaking truth into my life, I was able to have a strong identity. And when my identity was rooted in him, I could then flourish, and I could start to say, you know what? It's okay when I mess up. I don't have to be perfect. There are going to be times in my life that I'm going to need him to come in and step in for me. So, we have the opportunity in Kids Club to change the script for children. We don't know their stories. We don't know the lies that they've been hearing along the way. And this is true not for children, just for children, but also the adults that we meet are the people that we volunteer next to, the families that come for the first time through the doors, or even the families that come time and time and time again. We have the opportunity to speak truth in a way, in a language that they understand, and help them shift the scripts in their head so that they can see that they are enough as well. We believe that over time, when people know who they are, that their behaviors will reflect that. We will see fruit in their lives. So, today, I want you to stop, and I want you to think of one of the hardest scenarios that you've run into in Kids Club so far. So do you got it? Okay. So when you're thinking about that scenario, what I want you to stop and think, instead of saying, what's wrong with you? Why did you do that? Why are you hitting? You know, why are you so frustrated that I needed you to go reprint your sticker? You know, think of all those possibilities. Instead of saying that, what I want you to stop and think is, what could this person need? What is it? How can I come alongside of them and meet a need right now that's not being met for them? I want you to stop and say, especially in kids, are the children that I'm working with purposely, willfully disobeying? Or maybe the reason why they're doing what they're doing is it's just a survival technique that they're using. They don't know what else to do. So what I want you to do the next time you run into one of those kind of situations, I want you to stop, stay curious and not furious. See if you can check yourself and say in that moment, what do you need? How can I come alongside you and help you through this situation? Often when children are stressed, and this is what you'll see is either children responding in fighting, fleeing, or freezing. And this is kind of true even for adults. But what that might look like in Kids Club, when you have a child who's stressed and their natural response is to go to a fight type of posture, you're going to see fighting, you're going to see pushing, you're going to see taking toys, you're going to see mean words. All of those kinds of pieces are examples of what it might look like for a child to fight when they're stressed. You might see fleeing, and what that looks like is a child comes to the door and it's time to check in and they're hiding behind the caregiver that brought them today, and they're having a hard time to make it into the room. Or maybe you've made it to large group and they've asked 10 times to go to the bathroom, and they're spending more time in the bathroom than they're spending in large group or small group. Those are examples of what it looks like to flee a situation because you're stressed. freezing. So what this might look like are children that are standing on the edges. They are not quite sure how to get involved in play. When you go up to talk to them, they won't even speak to you at all. They might look at the floor. They might turn their body away. They might go find a corner and kind of crunch down. This is probably a little bit more prevalent in preschool, toddler round pieces, but you see it upstairs too? So those are examples of behaviors that you might see. And what I want you to realize is most often those are behaviors that are connected to a stressed child. Also, when you see examples like that in adults, it's because you're seeing stressed adults. So it might look a little different. It might be frustration or a response back or a quick statement in an adult. It will just look a little different. Sorry, I have too fast. Often things that can lead to reasons why children are stressed, it can be connected to that their basic needs aren't being met, that there might be a sensory processing challenge that's happening for them, or it could also be that there's a sign of trauma in their life. So when we think about basic needs, these are the moments when what do we need? We need food, water, shelter, right? I don't know about you, but at the end of the day, if I'm super tired and I'm really hungry, I'm irrational. Some people might call it hangry. Have you ever hung out with a kid who's hangry? Oh my goodness. My youngest, 6, if you hit 6 o'clock and you have not fed him, he is completely irrational. So, 5:30 service, what could we be experiencing? We could be experiencing tired, hungry kids, right? It might not be that there's anything else that's going on for them, but a basic need is not being met. And if their basic need is not met, it is very hard for them to be able to stay focused and stay engaged. So, for preschoolers and toddlers, I give you full permission. If you feel like that a child is hungry, feed them snacks. It is totally okay that you feed them as many snacks as they need. Now, if a parent or a caregiver says to you, please don't feed my kid, blah, 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 please honor the request of the parent. But if you think one of the reasons why a child is stressed in your room and you can solve it by providing a snack, do it. So, another thing that can possibly be happening for children is that they might have a sensory processing challenge. And this is something about the makeup of their body and their central nervous system. So something that you might see is children who are sensory defensive. And what I mean by that is for us, when something happens in our life, maybe it's a loud sound, or maybe it's the way something feels. If we put it on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is like, it doesn't really bother me at all, and 10 is I'm going to jump through the roof. We might feel it as a 2, but the child feels it like an 8. So often in Kids Club, you will see children who have sound sensitivities. And what that will look like is kids that put their hands over their ears when the music is loud or the room is loud. They might start to cry. They might refuse to go into large group. This is actually a big trigger for my youngest son. And for a number of years, preschool was really tough for him, because he was so sound sensitive and he was anticipating heading into large group. So if you see signs like that where kids are putting their hands over their ears, they're stressed. So it might be as simple as turning down the volume in the room a little bit, or calling and asking for a set of headphones to dampen sounds. Also, when kids are sensitive to touch, often you'll see aggressive behaviors. So they'll get bumped and they're convinced that it was a full-out hit. And so what they do is they retaliate. So that's something that you can see in the classrooms, is children retaliating to something that we observed as a really minor little thing, but for them it felt so much bigger. You can also see sensory-seeking behaviors. These are kids that are super wiggly. They have a really hard time holding still. They lay on the carpet and they roll around during large group. They're constantly bumping, they're constantly pushing, they're constantly lifting, they need constant input. You never see that, right? That never happens in kids' clubs, right? Another thing that you might see is poor self-regulation. And what that means is that for a child, and this is even true for adults, that sometimes it's really hard to stay calm and organized. And so once you get stressed, it becomes even harder to calm back down. We see this in two ways. You might see aggression that comes over that, where sometimes you'll see over the top, silly, excited, out of control, like it's a party. And those are examples of poor self-regulation when we're like, hey guys, it's time for small group, but they're still really excited and moving super fast. That never happens either, right? So, another thing that sometimes we don't really know is that we have kids and families that have experienced trauma. That means that we have kids and families who have lost loved ones, and it could have been really recent. Maybe a mom that dropped off their child in nursery just lost her husband. Or maybe a dad who just dropped off their infant in nursery. That infant was in NICU for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and they didn't know if the baby would survive. And what we end up is having is stressed families dropping off children, and they might be nervous about dropping off. So instead of saying, oh, they're so overprotective, maybe they've experienced a trauma and we just don't know about it yet. We haven't built enough of a relationship to know what lies beneath the surface for that. We have children here who are coming from foster care scenarios. This could be literally their first week with a new family. Can you imagine leaving a scenario and it's all you knew, and even though it wasn't exactly what was in your best interest, it's still what you knew, and that all of a sudden you're in a new family with new people that you're not even sure what their name is on a regular basis, and then you come to this giant place. That's really overwhelming for kids, right? And that's sometimes stories for children here in Kids Club, that they're experiencing another family. And what's good is that we have families here that are providing healthy, safe places for them to heal. But we also need to know that it's possible that they're still trying to work out that trauma in their lives. So let's picture a preschooler. We're going to name her Sally. It's 9 a.m. She arrives for service. She makes it to the door, and Sally's hiding behind her mom's leg. She is now weeping because it's time for her to glow in. We're trying to put a sticker dot on her sticker, and she's not wanting to be touched. And we have to pull her off her leg, and mom heads into service. And it takes us 5 minutes to calm her down. And then once she's finally calm, she's playing, but when somebody joins play, she snatches the toy away, or she screams or yells. And now it's time for large group, and she's in large group, and she's doing okay, but she's still a little on edge, and you know you're not quite sure what's going to happen next. And then she starts to ask to go to the bathroom, and she doesn't ask once, she asks 5 times, and now you've spent a lot of time up and out of large group. So, have you ever experienced those scenarios before? So what if I told you, oh, Jen's saying she has.
Oh, yeah.
So what if I told you that Sally's family went to Kings Island the day before, and they had the most fun they've ever had as a family. And they had so much fun that they skipped Sally's nap, and then they decided, because it was awesome and everybody was doing so well, that they were going to stay for the fireworks. And they're now well past Sally's bedtime. And fast forward, it's now the next morning, and it's time to eat breakfast because it's time to make it to service. And Sally refuses to eat breakfast. So it's possible that everything that we saw happen wasn't because the Sally, maybe 2 weeks ago, she had to have a procedure at the hospital. And at the hospital, she had to separate from mom and dad. And for her, that was really tough. And now every time she goes somewhere where she has to separate from mom and dad, she's worried that something bad is going to happen. So does that help you stop and think that possibly the things that we see, it could be because a basic need isn't met, or maybe a sensory processing need maybe there's a sensory processing concern, or maybe she's had a trauma in her life. We won't always know the story, right? But what we do know is we can stop and say, Sally, what do you need from me? How can I help you be successful today in Kids Club? So here in Kids Club, our mission is to create fun, welcoming, and safe environments. And we want to do this for kids and for families and for volunteers because we want to create a scenario so that they can meet God and grow in their faith. One way that we do this is that we help. Now, we do lots of things in Kids Club to make Kids Club safe, right? We have all these procedures in place, like stickers with matching numbers, 2 adults, 2 volunteers in a room always, 1 that's always cleared, right? We have all these systems to make Kids Club safe. Do you think that those things matter to kids? No, not at all, right? What matters to kids is if they feel safe. So, some ways that we make kids feel safe in Kids Club is that we create routines. And this is one of the reasons why we have lesson plans created from toddlers all the way through 5th graders. Because when we follow lesson plans, it gives a routine for the room. So like my preschooler Sally, if she's been around Kids Club long enough, she knows that there's a block of time that's for free play. There's a moment where we do connect time that helps her get settled to know what's going to come in large group. She knows if she's going to go to large group, and after large group there's going to be a snack. And then there's going to be a small group lesson that connects back to the story. We do that to help kids feel safe because when they know what to expect and they know what's coming, that helps disarm fear. So what you can do is help kids know what's going to happen next. Hey, right now we're going to do large group. We're going to watch this video. And after this video, we're going to talk a little bit about it. So that's ways that you can help kids know what's coming next. And when they know what to expect, it can disarm fear. Also, give children a voice. When there's a problem that's happening in a room, even if you saw what happened, stop and let them tell their story. Just by listening to the way that they perceive the scenario helps them know that you care about them and that you're willing to listen to what they have to say. Also, when we have children that are struggling, pull them closer in. Find ways to include them versus pushing them out. And lastly, one thing, and this is really important for older kids, think about the way that we communicate with others about the child. We want to be really mindful of how we're communicating to their parents when they come back for pickup or caregivers, because we want to be mindful and with the way that we are talking about them. Because for older children, if we're talking in a negative fashion about them in front of them, it makes it really hard for them to trust us. And if they don't trust us, it makes it really hard for us to build a connection and then be able to have the ability to speak into their lives so we can change direction. One thing when you are talking to parents about tricky situations, so I'm not telling you don't talk to parents about tricky situations. What I'm telling you is encourage it to be a dialogue about, hey, how can we come alongside Sally and make Sally successful in Kids Club? You, as the parent, know Sally better than anybody. Do you have any insights for me? That changes the way that the discussion is going when you're communicating with the family, just by shifting that. If you're trying to problem solve how to handle a tough situation with another adult in the room, maybe wait until after, or find a way to have that communication in a way that's not directly in front of a child. And that's another way to help older children feel safe in their environment and to know that you're trusted. It's not that you can't have those conversations, just be mindful in the way that you're having them. So the power of play. The more you play in your classrooms, the less negative behaviors you're going to see. The more you have things out in a room and available for kids to play, the more that they know where to go and what to do. And the more you show them what to do, the less things you're going to see that aren't going so well. So in older grades, think about what games you can set up preemptively on tables, and then strategically place the adult or the student volunteer that's not checking in kids at that table to start the game. In preschool rooms, start building a structure with the magnetiles. That will help give a vision for a child of where to go and what to do. Use your student volunteers, because student volunteers can be great for helping other kids come into the room for the first time and to get settled in the space. Be silly, be inviting, and get down on a child's level. Spend time sitting at the tables with them or all the way down on the floor. The more you play, the more connected you'll be, and the easier it is to speak into their lives and redirect when there's a problem. It's really hard to direct behavior if you don't have an initial starting spot. That's why in Kids Club we frequently say, connect before you correct. Because the more you're connected with a child, when you ask them to do something different from what they're doing right now, the easier it is for them to hear you and to shift their actions. So we're going to talk a little bit about tools for redirection. Use redos. So something happens that isn't how it should go down, give the child a chance to do it differently. They snatched a toy from a friend, practice giving it back to the friend and asking for the toy. Help them walk through, model it, guide them, because those scripts will carry out for the next time they have an interaction that they would like the same toy. Give two choices. So in elementary, I don't know, a few weeks ago, there was this giant stack of chairs, and there was a child all the way on top of the stack of chairs. And I walked in the room and I was like, oh, incident report. That was like my first oh no. So instead of going over to the child and saying, get down, that's not safe, blah, 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 what I did is I went over and I just started a conversation. And then after the conversation, I said, hey buddy, I need you to either sit on the ground or sit on a chair. Which one do you want to sit in? He's like, I'm pretty good here. I'm like, yeah, this is closed. But you could choose the chair or the floor. What would you like to pick? And he got down and he made a different choice. And then I quickly unstacked the chairs so that it wasn't going to be a problem 5 minutes later. Another tool that you can use is first then. So say you've got a whole group of kids that are really excited about those hula hoops. Remember we busted like, what was that? 17 hula hoops, guys. So they're having awesome, super much, tons of fun with hula hoops. But you know what? It's time for small group. What you can say is, hey Joey, you're pretty good at that hula hoop. How about if you and I have a hula hoop contest, but first, let's do small group, and then we can have the hula hoop contest. So it's not that you're telling them they can't do that thing, it's just saying that there's something else that we need to do first. I encourage you to use words around what you want to have happen. So what to do versus what not to do. So what I mean is, say you have a child that's climbed up on a piece of furniture and it's not safe. What I would say is, hey Johnny, put your feet on the floor, instead of, get down from there, that's not safe. So Drop out the no's or the don't do that, and instead tell them what you want to have happen. Children are way more likely to follow your directions if you tell them what to do versus what not to do. Also, give kids jobs. When they have things to do, they're less likely to end up in scenarios where they're hitting or pushing. And if you have a child that's hitting and pushing, maybe pull him into what you're doing and have them pass off supplies for a small group. Also, give positive attention. If you can if you have a child in your room that you know that might just need attention and that maybe they're doing actions to seek your attention, try to head that off and find positive ways to encourage that child and to build into them. So, as you guys do breakouts tonight, I want you to picture in your minds times that were tough in Kids Club, and I want you to try to shift your viewpoint to what does this child need? What does this adult need? And what's a strategy that you could use the next time you're faced with that scenario? So, that's it.
Sarah, I know that I have been guilty of that. Get down from that stack of chairs. Just get down. It's not that hard. What I really want to say is that you guys, God has given us these kids. And when I was growing up, I was in church, and you hear all about the greats, like Paul and Barnabas, and the big, long missionaries, and they went through hard things. And so I grew up thinking that I had to do those hard things too in order for God to be proud of me, in order for me to actually be doing something for God. And as my life has gone on, I'm finding like, oh, I'm just in Kids Club. Like one day I'll actually like die for the Lord. Like I'm gonna go on these long missionary journeys on a boat and get in a shipwreck. And it turns out that this kind of work, that what we do is what God is proud of, is what moves His kingdom forward. It's what Paul was spreading across the world and is now here, like we're the fruit of Paul's labor. We don't have to get in shipwreck. We just need to tell kids, hey, I'm so glad you're here. This reminds me, so I knew a lady. She was telling her testimony, and I asked her later, hey, expand on that a little bit. And her testimony was this. She grew up in a hard rural neighborhood, and she was from the kind of family where everybody knew her family, and not for good reasons. They were drug addicts. They were just not great people. And her last name was an identity for her in a bad way. She was so ashamed. She would get on the bus, and her brothers would be fighting on the bus and cussing and just causing all kinds of trouble. And she's like, man, why do I have to be from this family? Well, her bus driver would tell her every day, hey, you're a good kid. And then she would get off the bus. And then she would get back on the bus. Hey, you're a good kid. You're a good kid. She heard that every day. And as she was growing up in her family, fighting temptations and addictions herself, that was part of her identity. I'm a good kid. And she says it saved her life. So we don't have to have big words to say. We don't have to have the right thing to say. We need to be there consistently, just looking at kids in the eye, saying, you're a good kid, I'm glad you're here. You guys, this is gonna be great. I'm so glad to be doing this with you.